I didn't say a word when the HOA president started shouting about fraudulent filings and illegal claims. I just slid the certified federal protection order across the table, the one signed by the Department of Veterans Affairs and backed by state property law. Their lawyer went pale before the president even finished her sentence. She must have thought she was about to win, that she could bully me into surrendering the deed to the land they had already sold out from under me. But the seal on that order, embossed, undeniable, and utterly final, was like watching the air go out of a balloon. Suddenly the whole room understood what I had known for months. They weren't dealing with a confused, absent homeowner. They were dealing with a soldier who'd come back with the law on his side. When I first bought that lot, it wasn't about investment or development. It was just a patch of quiet land. Nothing spectacular about an acre and a half. Mostly scrub grass and some old oak trees at the edge of the subdivision. I bought it before deployment, because I wanted someplace still and simple to come back to. Maybe build a cabin later on. Somewhere that was mine, untouched by the politics and noise of daily life. After years of barracks and bases, the idea of a place where I could sit with coffee and hear nothing but wind through the trees felt like a gift. I never once thought about HOAs, or bylaws, or property disputes. Honestly, I didn't even think about neighbors. I figured a piece of land was a piece of land, and I could leave it alone until I was ready. The first notice arrived while I was overseas. My sister scanned it and emailed it to me. The HOA had fined me for failure to maintain landscaping. I laughed at first. What landscaping? It was dirt and grass. I wasn't planting roses on a lot I hadn't even broken ground on. But they kept coming. Notices about non-compliance, threats about liens, even a warning about abandonment. I wrote back explaining, politely, that I was on deployment, that the lot was exactly as it was when I purchased it, and that the HOA had no jurisdiction over undeveloped land. Their reply was brief. All lots are subject to HOA by failure to comply will result in further action. At that point, I still believed reason worked. I thought if I just clarified, maybe called into one of them meetings when I had access, they'd back off. I cited the deed, which clearly described the property as unimproved land, exempt from certain community maintenance requirements. I asked them to show me where in their bylaws they had authority over vacant parcels. Silence. Then, 2 months later, my sister called in a panic. A notice had been taped to the lot itself. The HOA had reclaimed it for non-payment of fines and was listing it for resale. That's when the mood shifted for me. I wasn't angry in the sense they probably hoped I'd be. I wasn't about to storm into a meeting or send off threats. Instead, something in me went cold. They'd sold my land. My land. While I was out of the country serving. I knew right then I'd never let this slide. I stopped emailing them. I stopped asking questions. I started pulling records. Every night I was empty out on duty, I was digging. I pulled county property maps, scanned veterans' property protections, even combed through the Service Members Civil Relief Act. The more I read, the clearer it became. They had overplayed their hand. Their so-called lien process had never been filed through the county. The deed was still in my name, and because I was on active duty, any action taken against my property without proper legal clearance was just invalid it, was potentially a federal offense. I documented everything. Screenshots of their emails, photographs of their posted notices, copies of every fine they'd sent. My sister drove down to the county clerk's office and mailed me certified records of the property line and title. I kept it all organized in a binder, page by page, even highlighting where their actions violated their own bylaws. And when I finally came back stateside, I went one step further. I contacted the Veterans Affairs Office and applied for a federal protection designation under a program most people don't even know exists. Certain properties owned by deployed service members can be shielded from foreclosure, seizure, or forced sale. It took paperwork, patience, and a lot of waiting, but when the designation came through, stamped and federally sealed, it was ironclad. Neighbors started whispering. I'd catch them avoiding eye contact when I walked by. The HOA president, a woman named Linda who thrived on control, suddenly grew louder in meetings. She told people I was trying to cheat the system, that I was making up stories, but she had no idea what I was building behind the scenes. By the time they formally tried to evict me from the subdivision meeting, I was already holding the order in my briefcase. The night of the reveal, the room was tense. They had already prepared a resolution declaring my property lawfully transferred. They thought I'd show up angry, maybe ranting, maybe emotional. Instead, I sat there quietly while they spoke over me. When it came time for me to respond, I said nothing. I just slid the binder across the table, turned to the page with the federal seal, and let their lawyer read it first. Watching his expression shift first confusion, then dread was the moment I knew I'd won. By the time Linda looked down at the document, the fight was already gone from her eyes. She stammered something about appeals and mistakes, but it was too late. The order stripped their authority, nullified every action they'd taken, and left them legally exposed. After that, everything unraveled quickly. The board members started resigning one by one. A couple of neighbors, the quieter ones, came up to me later and admitted they'd always thought it was wrong, but they were scared to speak up. The county sent a formal notice that the HOA had no jurisdiction over undeveloped lots. And Linda, she vanished from the neighborhood gossip chain after a lawsuit was quietly filed against her for fraud. Now the lot is mine again, untouched, just as I wanted it. Sometimes I drive out there and park, just to sit under the oaks and breathe. Nobody posts notices anymore. Nobody threatens me. The few times I cross paths with old board members, they either wave stiffly or turn away. Either way, it's quiet again, and that's all I ever wanted. The difference is, now I know better. Quiet doesn't just happen. Sometimes you have to fight for it, not with yelling or fists, but with patience, paper, and the kind of strategy that leaves your enemies realizing too late that you were never the one at a disadvantage.